My wife cheated on me with her boss, then claimed our $200, $0 house and $150, $0 retirement fund were marital assets. But I just found out she's been secretly selling off our property to fund her affair. Now she's suing me over everything and I don't know who's really betrayed whom. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be nothing but a lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty good life. We had a nice house, a decent retirement fund, and 2 kids who I loved more than anything. But all of that changed in a heartbeat, and I'm still trying to process just how deep the betrayal ran. It started with small things. Lisa's been acting weird lately, secretive texts, late nights at work, always quick to brush off my questions. At first, I figured she was just stressed or maybe had a new project. She's a high-powered marketing exec, so I understood her job could be demanding. But then I noticed her phone kept disappearing, and she became uncharacteristically defensive when I asked to see it. Little red flags, right? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept quiet, trying to give her space. One night I was sitting in the living room, flipping through some emails on my laptop, and I stumbled across something that made my stomach drop. It was a series of messages, texts, really, between Lisa and her boss, Mark. The language was flirty, maybe even suggestive. Nothing explicit, but enough to make me realize she'd been lying to me for months. They'd been meeting after hours, going out for dinners, and the way she talked about him. It was obvious they had something more than just a professional relationship. I felt sick. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind? I looked at our bank account statements, and that's when I saw it. Money was disappearing. Not a lot at first, but enough to catch my attention. Small transfers, secret payments. I figured she was just paying for something, maybe a side project or some hobby. But then I noticed larger sums, $10, zero here, $15, $0 there, being transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. I pulled the bank statements to see what was going on, and that's when I saw the real damage. Our house, the one we bought together for $200, $0, was being drained. There were withdrawals, sales, all happening behind my back. I couldn't believe it. Our retirement fund, which we'd been saving for years, $150, zero, was also being depleted, and I found out she'd been secretly selling off parts of our property. I had no idea she was liquidating assets, let alone funding her affair with her boss. It was like everything I thought was safe was just crumbling. The worst part, I had no idea how long she'd been doing this or how much more she was planning to take. I felt betrayed, furious, and completely helpless at the same time. When I finally confronted her, she shrugged it off like I was overreacting, said she was just trying to keep things interesting and that I was paranoid. She called me insecure, said I was imagining things, that Mark was just a mentor and she was under pressure at work. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying, hiding, and secretly selling off everything we'd built. The house, the retirement, our security, all gone or about to be gone because of her lies. My mind kept circling back to that moment. How did it all go so wrong? I'd never suspected she was capable of this level of betrayal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut and I didn't even know how to start fixing this mess. I was angry, yes, but also devastated. I loved her, or at least I thought I did, but now I wasn't sure if I'd ever really known her at all. And the worst part, she was still lying, still spinning her stories, and I had no idea what was real anymore. After I found out about the affair and the financial betrayal, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment, her sneaking around, the secret accounts, those damn messages. The house, our savings, everything we'd worked for. She was selling it all off to fund her affair with Mark. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next day, I decided I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I sat her down in the kitchen, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was boiling with rage. "Lisa," I started, my voice tight, "I know about Mark, I know about the money, I know everything." Her face went pale for a second, then she looked at me like I was bothering her. She crossed her arms and gave me that dismissive smirk that she's perfected over the years. "Oh, that," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting, it's not what you think." She tried to brush it off like I was some jealous fool throwing a fit over nothing. I didn't buy it. I told her I'd been tracking the money, seeing the withdrawals, the sales, everything. I asked her why she'd do this, why she'd lie and cheat and steal from us. Her response: "You've always been too controlling, John. I needed something for myself. Mark understood that, and the money. I was just trying to keep us afloat, with everything going on at work." She said it so casually, like stealing from our future was just a minor inconvenience. That's when I saw her true colors: bitchy, manipulative, and completely unrepentant. She looked at me like I was the one in the wrong, like I was the one ruining everything. "You're just jealous," she snapped. "Mark and I have something real. You're just too blind to see it. Maybe if you weren't so insecure, you'd understand." I couldn't believe her. How could she sit there and lie so easily? She was throwing around words like insecurities and control, trying to turn the tables on me. All I wanted was the truth, but she was just spinning, making me feel like I was the crazy one. My head was spinning. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal all at once. I thought about all those years: our wedding, the kids, the house, the retirement fund. For her to turn around and sell off everything we had built, it was like she was erasing our life together. I realized she'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I didn't even know the half of it. That night, I stayed up, digging into bank records, emails, anything I could find. I discovered even more: hidden accounts, transfers to offshore banks, and even that she'd been secretly working with a lawyer to claim our house and retirement fund as marital assets to shield herself from the fallout. I found out she'd been planning her escape, probably for months, and that she'd already started some legal battle to take everything. It hit me hard. She was not just cheating on me with Mark. She was planning to take our entire life and walk away with it. I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back, and I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or just give up. But I knew one thing: I couldn't let her win. Not without a fight. I'd spent years building that house, that retirement, that life, and I wasn't going to let her destroy it just because she was bored or wanted some excitement. I started making calls, trying to get legal advice, figuring out what rights I had. I wanted to stop her from selling everything, but I also knew I had to be strategic. She was a manipulative bitch who would twist everything to her advantage if I wasn't careful. I knew I had to gather evidence, document everything, and prepare myself for what was coming. I was furious, but I also knew I had to be smart if I was going to fight her in court and protect what was left of our life. Honestly, I don't even recognize myself in all this. I used to think I was a calm, reasonable guy. Now I'm just angry, betrayed, and trying to piece my life back together from the wreckage she left behind. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, and steal our future away, and then act like I was the crazy one for catching her? It's like I was living with a stranger, and I still can't wrap my head around how someone I loved and trusted could become so cold, so calculating. I just want my life back, but I know it's not going to be easy. After I gathered all the evidence and started consulting lawyers, I realized just how deep Lisa had gone into her scheme. She wasn't just sneaking around with Mark. She was actively trying to wipe us out financially. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The house, the retirement fund, all of it was being drained or sold off behind my back, and she was prepared to fight me in court over everything, claiming it was marital assets. I remember the day I found out she'd already filed a lawsuit. She was claiming ownership of the house, the retirement fund, everything we had jointly earned. She even threw in the fact that I'd been controlling and emotionally abusive, trying to paint me as the bad guy. That bitch was good. She knew how to spin her lies. But I had enough evidence to show she'd been secretly selling off our property, funneling money into her accounts, and funding her affair with Mark. I knew I had to stay calm and clear-headed, but inside I was boiling with rage. In the meantime, Lisa kept up her act, bitchy and dismissive. Every time I tried to talk to her about the situation, she'd throw words like insecure, paranoid, or accuse me of trying to control her. She was good at gaslighting me, making me question my own sanity, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I knew her game. She wanted to turn everyone against me, make me look like the bad guy so she could walk away with everything. One day, I caught her in another lie. She said she was at a conference, but I found out she was with Mark having dinner at some fancy restaurant. I saw the photos on her phone. That was the moment I realized she was actively trying to hide her affair better, and she was using her legal tactics to shield herself from the fallout. I felt the anger surge again. How could she be so selfish, so manipulative? I'd been with her for over 10 years, and now I was questioning everything I thought I knew about her. I decided I had to take control of the situation, so I hired a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and asset protection. We drafted a plan to freeze her accounts, prevent her from selling any more property, and gather all the evidence of her financial misconduct. It was clear she was planning to take everything and run, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to dig up every lie, every secret transaction, and use it all to get justice. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but feel betrayed on a personal level. I'd always thought she was ambitious, maybe a little bitchy at times, but I never suspected she'd be capable of this level of betrayal, selling off our house, draining our retirement, lying to my face while she was out screwing her boss. The thought of her in bed with Mark, smiling, pretending everything was fine, it made me sick. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see her sneaking around or notice the subtle shifts in her behavior. I kept coming back to the moments I ignored the red flags, the times I brushed off my gut feeling because I wanted to believe in her. The hardest part was the emotional toll. I was furious, yes, but also heartbroken. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I was wondering if I ever really knew her at all. I felt like a fool for trusting her so blindly. Every time I saw her face, I'd think about the lies behind her eyes, the sneers she'd throw when she thought I wasn't looking. It was like I was living with a stranger, someone capable of destroying our entire life just to fuel her own selfish needs. But I also knew I had to keep my focus. I couldn't let her manipulate me into a corner. I had to protect what was left of our life, and that meant fighting her in court, fighting her lies and making sure she paid for what she'd done. I started documenting everything, saving every email, every bank statement, every text message. I wanted proof, not just of her infidelity, but of her financial misconduct. If she thought she could just sell off our house and take our retirement without consequences, she was dead wrong. I won't lie, there were moments I wanted to give up, to just walk away and forget the whole thing. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after everything we had shared. I had to stand up for myself, for my kids, and for what we built together. Because if I didn't, she'd walk all over me and I'd be left with nothing. And that's just not who I am. The legal battle started to heat up, and I quickly learned just how ruthless Lisa could be. She was pouring money into lawyers of her own, trying to outmaneuver me at every turn. Her strategy was clear: drag things out, make me look unstable, and spin her story so that the court would see her as the victim. She'd sit there in court, bitchy and dismissive, throwing around words like abuse and control, trying to paint me as some kind of monster. But I had the evidence on my side, proof of her selling off property, draining our accounts, and her secret affair with Mark. One day I found out she'd hired a private investigator. Of course she did. She was trying to dig up dirt on me, maybe to use it against me in court or just to intimidate me. I wasn't surprised. Lisa's always been good at playing dirty. But I kept my cool. I knew I had nothing to hide. I kept pushing forward, gathering every shred of proof I could find. I even hired my own investigator, someone I could trust, to verify her stories and track her movements when she was with Mark. The most shocking moment came when I discovered she'd been secretly selling parts of the house, one lot at a time, without telling me. She'd been funneling the money into offshore accounts, probably to hide it from the courts. I found bank statements and wire transfers that confirmed it. I couldn't believe she was so brazen, so cold. I felt numb, like I was living in some twisted nightmare. How could she do this to us? To me? To the kids? I remember sitting in my lawyer's office, staring at the evidence laid out before me. The lawyer told me I had a strong case to block her from selling any more property. We filed emergency motions to freeze her accounts and prevent her from liquidating anything else. I also discovered that she'd been secretly working on a legal claim to take ownership of the house and the retirement fund, claiming they were marital assets, even though she'd been secretly selling off parts of the house and draining the retirement. The courtroom battles were intense. Lisa was confrontational, bitchy, and manipulative. She'd lie under oath, twist facts, and try to paint me as the villain. But I had everything documented: screenshots, bank statements, emails. I knew I was fighting not just for the house or the money, but for my dignity. I was tired of her games. Every time she threw a tantrum or tried to gaslight me, I reminded myself that I had the truth on my side. Meanwhile, her relationship with Mark seemed to be heating up even more. She'd be gone for days at a time, claiming it was work. But I knew better. I'd find her. Texts on her phone, flirty, suggestive messages, always trying to hide them. I felt so betrayed, so angry. How could she be so selfish? She was willing to destroy her family, her marriage, everything we'd built just to have some affair with her boss. And all the while, she was trying to convince everyone she was the victim. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was walking through a minefield every day. One moment I was furious, the next I was just numb. I'd look at the house we'd bought together, the memories we'd made, and wonder how she could just sell it all off piece by piece. It was like she wanted to erase us from her life, and I was left trying to hold onto what little I had left. The betrayal cut deep. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I was so blind to her true nature. But I couldn't let her win. I knew I had to stay strong, hold my ground, and fight for what was rightfully mine. I kept telling myself I'd get through this, that eventually the truth would come out and justice would be served. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, our house, our savings, our future, just because she was clever with her lies. I had to believe that, even when it felt like everything was falling apart. The court proceedings dragged on longer than I expected, and every day I felt like I was fighting a losing battle against her lies and manipulation. Lisa was relentless, bitchy, dismissive, and always trying to spin things her way. She'd show up to court dressed to impress, acting like the victim, crying fake tears and throwing out accusations about how controlling I'd been. It was disgusting. She'd claim I was trying to keep her from being happy, that I'd been emotionally abusive, and that she deserved to take everything because I was so mean. But I had the evidence. Every email, every bank statement, every witness. I had proof she'd been secretly selling off parts of our property, funneling money offshore, and planning her escape for months. I remember sitting in the courtroom, watching her try to manipulate the judge, and feeling this mixture of rage and helplessness. I knew she was lying, that she'd been lying for a long time, but the court seemed to buy her act, at least for now. I kept my composure and presented everything I had, knowing it was my best shot to stop her from walking away with our house and our retirement. One day, I found out she'd been secretly meeting with Mark, even during the court hearings. I saw the photos on her phone, dinner dates, hotel stays, whispers in the parking lot. That was the final straw. I realized she wasn't just stealing our money, she was actively choosing Mark over her family. It was like she was trying to erase us all, to start fresh with him, leaving me and the kids behind. I felt sick every time I thought about how she betrayed us all for some fleeting affair. In the middle of all this chaos, I decided I couldn't let her get away with it. I filed a motion to have her declared unfit to manage our assets, citing her secret sales and offshore accounts. I wanted her to be held accountable. I also started working on a plan to get full custody of the kids, something I knew would be tough given her manipulative nature, but I was determined to protect them from her toxicity. I wasn't just fighting for the house or the money. I was fighting for my family's future, for their safety from her lies and schemes. Meanwhile, her legal team kept pushing back, trying to drag things out, hoping I'd get exhausted or give up. But I refused. I knew she was trying to wear me down, to make me doubt myself, but I had come too far to turn back now. Every new piece of evidence I uncovered, every lie she told, only made me more certain I was doing the right thing. I was tired, exhausted, really, but I couldn't let her win. She had already destroyed so much of what we built, and I was just trying to salvage what I could for my kids and myself. The emotional toll was enormous. I'd sit alone in the dark, thinking about all the moments I missed, the signs I ignored, the times I tried to be a good husband and father. I kept replaying everything, asking myself how I'd let her manipulate me for so long. But deep down, I knew I had to keep fighting. I had to stay strong for my kids, for myself. I realized I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly, but I also knew that I couldn't change the past. All I could do now was fight for my future, for the truth to come out, and for her to be held accountable for what she did. Looking back, I see how much I've lost and gained from this nightmare. It's been a brutal lesson in trust, who not to, and in the importance of standing up for yourself. I still wrestle with anger and sadness, but I also have a clarity I didn't have before. I know I won't let her destroy everything we had without a fight, and I hope, someday, I'll find peace in knowing I did everything I could to protect my family from her lies and betrayal. The final court hearing was a whirlwind. Lisa showed up, still bitchy and dismissive, trying to maintain her manipulative facade. She spun her tales about how I'd been controlling, paranoid, and emotionally abusive, trying to paint herself as the victim again. But I had everything laid out in front of the judge, proof of her secret sales, offshore accounts, and her affair with Mark. I could see the cracks in her composure as I presented the evidence, and I knew she was realizing her carefully crafted story was falling apart. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The house stayed in my name, and her claim to the retirement fund was denied because we proved she'd been secretly selling off parts of the house and draining the accounts. She was ordered to pay back the money she'd stolen and was restricted from selling or transferring any more property until the case was settled. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I finally felt like I was taking back control of my life, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. Lisa was furious. She tried to appeal, but her arguments held no water. She was forced to hand over the keys to the house, and I moved out with the kids into a smaller place. The house, once our symbol of stability, was now just a memory. The retirement fund was gone, but I had started rebuilding my savings, determined to give my kids a stable future. We had some rough months, but I focused on being there for them, making sure they knew they weren't at fault for any of this. Lisa's legal battles continued for a while, but she eventually gave up, realizing she wasn't going to get everything she wanted. Mark disappeared from her life, probably realizing she was too much trouble. She was left with nothing but bitter memories and a court order to stay away from me and the kids. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. The betrayal had taken everything: trust, security, innocence. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I could breathe without that heavy weight of her lies pressing down. Looking back, I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and people can surprise you in the worst ways. I learned that even when you think you know someone, they can hide their true nature behind a smile and lies. I also learned how vital it is to stand up for yourself, no matter how intimidating the fight. If I hadn't fought back, she would have walked away with everything, leaving me and the kids with nothing. Now, I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. The scars will always be there. But I'm stronger for having survived this. I tell myself every day that I did what I had to do to protect my family and myself. The betrayal was brutal, but it taught me to be more cautious, more aware. I hope others can learn from my story. Trust is important, but so is protecting yourself from those who might betray you. Never let anyone take away your future without a fight. Sometimes, the only way to reclaim what's yours is to stand up and fight for it, even when it feels like everything's falling apart.